Hey everybody, good afternoon. This is Mike McCormick with Advanced Criminology here in Owings Mills. Welcome you guys back for an update on the Detective Sean Suiter murder. As if you don't know, some of you around the country, around the world who are following this particular channel, on December 1st, 2017, the Sun is reporting, the Baltimore Sun, is reporting that the police commissioner has asked that the FBI take over the Sean Suiter, Detective Sean Suiter's murder case. So we had some thoughts on that particular reasoning behind the commissioner's issuance of that particular statement, and we wanted to discuss that in this particular video. Certainly, as always, if you guys have any comments, you know where to post your comments, and I think I've been pretty good at getting back to you guys within a day or so. So let's go ahead and look at why the police commissioner has decided that it's time to bring the FBI in to investigate this case. And I'll give you kind of like what I think is going on behind the scenes based on my experience, and we'll go from there. So let's take a look at some of the statements. Now, as we go along, there are a couple things I'm going to talk about in this particular video. One, I'm going to discuss reasoning why the FBI took over the case. Other than the fact that the commissioner asked. The other would be I'm going to look at the police department's whistleblower policy, which is policy number 1729. You can find that policy outlined on the police department's webpage under the transparency tab, policies number 1729, and you can read it for yourself. It's a 3-page policy. So let's continue on. Let me get my glasses off as usual. We believe at some time the commissioner was confronted during this investigation that it had stalled. And when we say had stalled, meaning that there virtually was just no more information coming in to assist them to get any closer to a suspect in this case. So it was determined through the commissioner's office and the local homicide investigators in this case with Baltimore Police Department that the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office had information that they were not going to share with the Baltimore Police Department. I can tell you if they're not going to share it, it's because they felt that they couldn't trust the department. Plain and simple. I'm not going to sit here and obfuscate what I just said. Basically, when someone doesn't want to share information with you, it's because they don't trust you with handling sensitive information. You can kind of see how that happened many years ago with 9/11 when the FBI had information in the field offices, and they didn't want to pass it on to other investigators because they didn't feel they could trust pass that information on to other agencies within the Justice Department and local agencies as well. So it's just been an ongoing thing with some police agencies. Sometimes they feel it they just can't rely on other agencies, or they may not have the credibility that they want to share certain sensitive information in an ongoing case. So it's obvious that they do have some information. What? We don't know. But we'll find out in months to come. So I also think that keep in mind that the detective's partner is a homicide detective. And quite naturally, they didn't want to share, couldn't share any information in this case, particularly if he becomes central to their investigation. So that makes sense. Let's see. And also, it was the situation where they also felt that they could not. The FBI also felt that they didn't think they would get the kind of support from the officers in the field in general, in terms of whether or not they would be fully committed to basically sharing information if they had it about if in fact it turns out to be a conspiracy. What information they might have had. So again, the FBI felt this way. Because it's a systemic, and as you well know, if you follow Advanced Criminology and you really look at some of the videos that we've put out, you will see I go into grave detail about police misconduct. You really need to, if you haven't seen the videos, certainly take the time to look at the videos. Quite naturally, some people don't want to sit through videos that are 25, 30, 40 minutes to 50 minutes long. I understand that. But because of the volume of information I'm giving you, it just extends over into that kind of period of time. Because I really don't want to leave out what I would believe to be essential information for a clear understanding. And so that's why in most of the videos I kind of break things down in its simplest form. And, and certainly if you have any questions, generally comment me, and if I can give you additional information or where to go to for certain things, I'll certainly put that in my response back to you. So we said it was a systemic problem with the police misconduct. Right now the department has no credibility with the federal government, we feel. And quite naturally, they're under federal mandate to clean up their act. And so the court has ordered that outside agency come in and monitor the police department for the next 3 years and report back to the court what their findings are in terms of the police department, whatever recommendations that were made, and what have they done since those recommendations have been made. And that expires in 3 years, and then if there's a continuing issue, it can be revisited and go on for another 3 years until the department gets their act together. So if you didn't know, the FBI was given the recorded transmissions from Officer Suter the night of the incident to try to kind of make sense of what was said in that 3-second spot of information, or garbled information that was put out, and the FBI has sent it to their crime lab, and they still couldn't come back with anything positive or couldn't make out what was being said. However, they all agree that they did hear a gunshot, 2 gunshots on that particular 3-second bit of transmission from the officer. Let's see. I wanted to discuss real quick the whistleblower policy, and I have it on the screen here. And policy number 1729, dated August 26, 2017. Now, it says here, it is a policy of the Baltimore Police Department to complement departmental integrity and to avoid hostile working conditions by requiring the mandatory reporting of serious violations of law and/or departmental policy, procedures, and rules, and by prohibiting purposeful retaliation against members who make such reports. That's kind of a standard paragraph that you'll find in a lot of whistleblower protection policy now, and that's not isolated to the police department. That's throughout the country and any organization that you work in, pretty much now, where there's a standard policy the Human Resources puts out now to basically keep employees safe if they have valid information that they want to turn in about someone on the job. When we go down to what definition is, they have several definitions here, and one I thought was interesting, what they call retaliatory conduct. And it's the conduct, says in this context of this policy, retaliatory conduct includes any deliberate, purposeful actions or failures to act directed against members that cause or that could reasonably be expected to cause physical harm, property damage, significant emotional stress, or otherwise negatively affect another member's terms or conditions of employment, or that could seriously impair the efficiency, safety, or effectiveness of that member, this department, or both. Such adverse actions may take many forms, including but not limited to bullying, persistent offensive comments, threats, intimidation, false accusations, isolating, ostracizing, or acts that malign or disparage an individual's reputation. That was a lengthy paragraph. I'm sorry. It probably looks better if you read it yourself as opposed to me telling you that over video screen. So I found that interesting when we talk about retaliatory conduct, because if this case turns out to be, a case where this officer was targeted for murder, a contractual murder, this will come back in a sense, in terms of its policy, probably to include where a person, even though they say it was a threat against that could reasonably be expected to cause. Well, I think the timing, this policy just came out. This policy came out in August of this year. So I don't ever think for 1 minute that Officer Suter thought his life was in danger. That's just my position on it, because I'm certainly, if he thought that, I'm sure he would have come forth sooner to complain that his life was in danger. So I don't even think it never crossed his mind that he was in danger of anything. I guess he just saw himself as, look, they called me in. I'm going to go do my duty and go to talk to the grand jury. And again, the U.S. government they hold firm that they did not know what Officer Suter would testify to. They just knew that he was part of the arrest team in that particular case, and they figured that he might have some information, so let's bring him in to the grand jury and see what, see what develops. So up until this point, the Officer Suter never felt his life was in danger. And I'm sure this policy also will change, among other policies, after this particular case. So I wanted to talk about that briefly, but just to give you what the policy is, you can look at yourself, as I said before, and make your own evaluations. I've always told you in some of these videos, whatever I give you, particularly when it comes to departmental rules and regulations, I'm going to give it to you as they print it and disseminate to their own employees to view and to implement. Let's see. What else we have here? Okay. So, but let me tell you something. Since this policy has been, I'll tell you a question to ask the police department. Since this policy has been in effect and since August, okay, so it's August, September, October, November, December. So roughly 5 months now that this policy has been in effect. I would like to go back and talk to the commissioner's office, particularly planning and research, or those offices, or internal affairs office, to really find out exactly, since this policy has been acted, because we all know across the country, historically there's been what they call a blue wall of silence. So okay, well, the whistleblower protection policy, is supposed to knock down that blue wall of silence, and if so, then I'd like to know how many officers have come forward from that department since this policy has come into practice. Just to see how many officers have basically turned in other officers based upon their questionable behavior in the field. I would like to know, and I think that's a valid question that citizens would like to know. So I'll leave it at that. But certainly that's a question that we have. And it might be something we might put together and post to the commissioner's office the first of the year as well, because I'm interested to hear their response. I'm also concerned now with the FBI coming in. One of the best things about the FBI coming in is that they bring a bunch of resources that local departments really do not have, and knowledge, expertise, the latest technology on crime scene investigation. They bring all that stuff in. And when I talk about the latest technology in crime scene investigation, I don't think this department has the latest technology, because there's some stuff out there, particularly when it comes to mapping, sonar mapping of crime scenes when you're trying to find metal objects in grounds and things like that. They don't have that technology. So I bring that up because the department indicated that 2 rounds were never found. From those 3, out of the 3, there were 2 that were never found. We know 1 hit the officer, but the other 2 they weren't there. And my question would be, what methods did they use to try to locate those rounds in that crime scene area? One of the things I noticed, now, remind you that I had been down to the crime scene twice. I had gone down on the 23rd, and I had gone down on the 28th of November. Twice now. And each time when I went down there, I saw hundreds of pieces of potential evidence that I wonder, why is this stuff still hanging around, still sitting around? How come it hasn't been taken to the crime lab for further analysis? But I was just thinking it to myself. It just didn't make too much sense to see. You can't convince me that all that trash and paper came there after the 15th, after the day officer was murdered. That stuff had been there, and who knows, who can say whether or not the suspect that they were looking for, suspect that they were dealing with that day, whether or not, remember now, there was a 20-minute gap, so who knows, he might have been hanging out in that spot, smoking a cigarette, maybe eating a candy bar, whatever the case may have been, which means his fingerprints is on that stuff, which I would like to know what decision-making went into what evidence would be taken from the crime scene and what evidence would be left at the crime scene. And if it was overwhelming to them, why didn't they bring in, they have some top-notch crime scene investigators for the state of police in Maryland. We have our own crime lab in Maryland, huge crime lab that does a lot of the DNA stuff, and that's just a phone call from the commissioner to say, look, we're limited on the staff here because not only, now keep this in mind too, there's shootings every day in this city, there are robberies every day in the city, and so the crime lab has to also respond to those issues of crime scenes and collect evidence as well. So we just don't have the Officer Suter case going on. We have other cases going on too every single day. So if they were stretched thin, or if they didn't have the resources to do it, it would have been nice for the commissioner, CEO, to say, hey, look, we really want to bring resources to bear on this. We want help from outside agencies to bring in crime lab equipment that they might have, we don't have, because this is one of our own that got killed. Again, that's just me, from my perspective, that if you have the resources, you use them. Because again, here we are 3 weeks into this case, and we're still talking about a guy with a black jacket on and a white stripe. I'm kind of disappointed in the department because a couple of public affairs announcements from them where they indicated at least a week into this homicide that they had found significant evidence. And then they turn around and tell us that the significant evidence that they went back to get was a bullet fragment. And so in my mind, I saw it, I don't necessarily see it as significant because all it did was just tell us that, he was shot in the head and he died through a gunshot wound, and his DNA was on that particular round. Okay, I got it. But when you say the word significant, you have people in this city, when you say significant, that means you have not just that, you should have more. And because you don't have more, it's kind of a letdown just to say, hey, look, this is all we recovered was a bullet fragment from the scene. But that bullet fragment didn't lead to anything else. It didn't lead to a suspect. And so I always ask sometimes why public officials get on TV and kind of obfuscate and kind of take what they have to make it more than what it is, and because the citizens are expecting. They're expecting the police department to solve this case. At least they did within the first 7 to 10 days, and they did not. And so to me, when you come on and you say, well, we have significant, meaning that, hey, you got a suspect. When you say significant in my eyes, that means you got a suspect. You got somebody, okay? All of this crime scene technology and all of the investigative, intuitive, professional detectives that are on that homicide, you guys have got this guy narrowed down. It's just a matter of picking him up, in my mind, when you say the word significant. So I'm gonna leave that alone. Okay, now, when I was down at the crime scene, again, I saw hundreds of items that I thought that could be recovered and fingerprinted or whatever, okay? Again, they didn't ask for any help. But talked about the projectiles, and then the equipment. They got some top-notch. I told you, top-notch equipment, sonar stuff. I mean, they got some really state-of-the-art equipment out there for crime scene detection. You're talking about 2 spent rounds that we still have not found yet, but yet the crime scene was only processed in areas. If you go back to one of my prior videos, the crime scenes were only processed in areas A and B. They didn't go across the street. You're talking about trajectories of rounds. They could be anywhere. But if you talk about rounds being fired in that small space, we certainly know that if they bounced off the south wall and the north wall, then they should have been found. And if they didn't, and if they were gone, if they were shot, if the round trajectory was east or west, I know if it was east, it would have hit a wall. It would have hit a wall of a building. I know that if the round ended up going west in the area B, that round should be lodged somewhere across the street in somebody's door, window seal. But again, those things were never, they just limited the scope. I don't know why. And so I just thought I'd bring that up to you. So now in the first couple weeks of this case, we have information that suspect, if the police department was going to locate a suspect, they would have gotten information that somebody saw something. Maybe somebody overheard somebody talking about a murder that they had committed. Maybe there might have been a suspect vehicle somewhere. That's never been brought up. That might have been a getaway car somewhere. Lots of times that happens. Guy commits a crime, but parks the vehicle, a block or 2 away from it, so the vehicle's not attached to the crime scene itself. Nobody's gonna recognize a guy getting in the car 2 blocks from a crime scene, but they will recognize somebody getting in the car in front of a crime scene. So, we don't, that is something that would have been, we didn't get any of that kind of information. When you talk about physical evidence, your fingerprints, DNA, gun, trace fibers from the struggle. Footprints, they said they processed the scene also for they could tell it was a struggle. They certainly certainly talk about the disarray of the officer's clothing in the struggle. So that's important stuff, you know. Trace fiber transfer, you know, under they call it the exchange principle, where you know, contact leaves a trace from one person to another, that kind of thing, or from one area to another. And so we really don't have as much forensics as one would think that we would have at this point in this case, which makes it very, very complex in my mind. And so, you know, I look forward to what the FBI will present, you know, how they want to conduct their investigation. You know, we'll know more. But one thing I do know is in the world that the FBI is going to share anything that they have with this department based upon the things I just discussed early on, that this department is not a department that has the kind of credibility that a top-notch agency like the FBI would want to share anything with at this point to compromise their investigation. I'm going to leave it at that. Appreciate your time. As always, leave your comments, and I look forward to talking to you on your comments and putting on some more material in the next few days or the upcoming week. My name is Mike McCormick. I'm with Advanced Criminology, and we'll see you next time.